So, you've seen my review on towing with the Volkswagen Atlas, or you're just looking for information on installing a trailer brake on your Atlas so that way you can safely tow your load down the road. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Jason here from JTV Life. In this video, I'm going to talk about the brake controller that I purchased for my Atlas, the reasons why I purchased it, and then we're going to go over an install. That way you can get a super clean install of this trailer brake in your Atlas. Let's go. So if you watched my first video I made on towing with the Volkswagen Atlas, you'll know that I didn't have a brake controller on the Atlas. The reason I didn't do this is because when I picked up my trailer from the dealer, the guy that installed my hitch told me that I didn't need one. Well, of course, you know, people came in the comments and said that I should probably get one. And when I did a little bit further research into it, yeah, there is exactly no signal heading to the brakes in my trailer. Now, my particular trailer uses electric brakes. Different types of brakes that you could have on trailers could be a surge brake, which is a hydraulic brake, or you could have electric over hydraulic, which utilizes an electronic pump to provide the vacuum to the booster, and then hydraulic fluid heading down to the drums to activate the braking action on your trailer. Now, there are so many different brake controllers on the market. It is astonishing. They go for as cheap as 50 bucks, expensive up to like $300. I got something kind of in the middle. I got the Redarc Tow Pro Elite. It was about $208 from eTrailers.com. They do make a less expensive one, just a Tow Pro, and it's about $154. I wanted that one, and I kind of sat on it for a couple days, and of course, it's sold out, and I was in a rush to get it. A, to make this video for y'all, and B, because I needed to move my trailer because we just got a new storage unit that's closer to the house. So I wanted to have the brakes for that trip. Now, the main difference between the Tow Pro and the Tow Pro Elite is the Tow Pro Elite can be used on trailers 1 to 3 axles, where I believe the other model, the cheaper one, is only for 1 axle. Now, it does work with both electronic brakes and electric over hydraulic brakes, so it gives you a little bit of a variety in the types of trailer brakes that you can use with this controller. Also, it's a proportional brake controller, which means instead of being timed, like some kind of like I guess the archaic ones to these days, there's actually accelerometers inside this thing that can tell how quickly that the vehicle is responding to your brake input and how quick it is braking, and then it's gonna give signal to the trailer's brakes proportional to how the vehicle is reacting to your foot on the brake pedal. So I thought that was actually really cool. The other awesome part about this particular model is that the accelerometers are in the device in such a way to where it doesn't matter how you mount it inside your vehicle. It doesn't have to be flat or perpendicular to the ground. You can mount it in any position that you find fit, so long as it's mounted to something rigid, meaning when you hit the brakes, it's not gonna flex. So you don't wanna zip tie it around a bundle of wires or something really loose. You wanna make sure that you anchor this thing down to where it's not gonna move. The main thing about the Redarc that I like the best is that its control knob is separate from the module itself. So you don't have this big dorky thing with LEDs on it hanging below your dash where your legs go. I'm a pretty big guy, so I need all the space I can get between my legs, especially on long trips. It has a real small knob that turns the control gain, and also you can push it in to apply manual brakes. Redarc also has a really slim profile, which allowed me to mount it in a very discreet location that's easily accessible if I ever had to get to it. It utilizes the standard 4 wires that pretty much all brake controllers use. And the harness, it wasn't as hard as I was expecting on the Atlas to find. Initially, I first purchased one of the Bluetooth ones from Kurt, but then I realized in practicality it wasn't gonna work that good because you had to have a Bluetooth connection to a device to control it. And most of the time I'm using my phone for GPS. So if I wanted to apply manual brakes, I'd have to somehow quickly move over to the app or use an old burner phone, but I had to keep 2 different phones charged. It seemed like a good idea because you didn't have to wire anything. But in practical sense, I just didn't think it was gonna work out long run, so I ended up returning it. The whole install, probably front to back, only took about an hour to an hour and a half. I did do it over the course of a few days because I'm battling the weather here in Northern California in the winter, where it gets cold and it rains and it's overcasted a lot. So it took me 2 nights to get it in, just working on it a little here, a little there, but it really wasn't that hard at all. Let's get started on installing it. So here's a list of the tools that I used. You don't have to use all these. I mean, in reality, all you need is the T15 driver, some butt connectors, and a wire stripper, and then some means of securing the module into your dash somewhere. All right, this is what everything looks like out of the box. I did buy this one wire harness here. It's made by Kurt. It had one side that goes to a Kurt controller. The other side was supposed to go to the Atlas, and I was gonna cut the Kurt side off and splice in the pigtail that came with the Redarc. But there was kind of mixed info online on whether that would fit or not. I went YOLO and gave it a shot, and it doesn't fit, so we are just gonna cut the wires. Got some really nice directions here on mounting the switch into your dash. And they give you a little hang tag that you can hang on your knob for the first couple times you tow. That way you can kind of get used to what all the functions are. First piece we need to remove is this kick plate that's down by where your hood release is. Down there is where we're gonna find the trailer brake harness. Some people say it's under the footrest, some people say it's under there. I guess maybe depending on what day your Atlas was put together, it could be different, but mine was right behind that kick plate. It was secured by some cloth tape. Once I got that cut off, it's a pretty nice length of wire. You can buy all these parts right here to make an OEM wire harness to go in there, but I'm just cutting it. I always like to start off with a multimeter, test all my wires to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. There's a really nice service bulletin right here, and I'll put a link to it in the description below. That gives you all the information you need to identify these wires. Don't be hating on the Harbor Freight hustle. My Fluke is up on the camper right now. Don't forget, it's always good practice to test those leads for continuity before you go testing. That way you know your multimeter is functioning before you try to test wires with it. First thing we're gonna test is the ground. We got one lead in the brown wire, and we're gonna ground it out to the seat frame. All right, next we're going for the power wire. We're looking to have 12 volts here at least. That's the red and white wire. If you don't have power, check your fuses. It's a 2-fuse system. One of them is that 15 amp fuse right there in the bottom left of the fuse box. The other one is in line with the fuse box all the way up under the dash. It's a 30 amper right there. Last we're gonna check is the red and black wire in the harness, which is the signal from our brake pedal. This is gonna let the brake controller know that we're applying brakes. All right, now to get this panel out, we gotta pop out that drawer by pushing the little tab and swinging it out, and we're gonna loosen and remove 10 screws. The heads on these are T15. 6 of them are down in the bottom. One of them is hiding behind this light switch. Just push in, turn it clockwise, it'll come right out. Screw number 7's back there. Now we're going to use our bike tire levers to gently pry the AC vent cover off and a little bit of those rings that go around the gauges so we can access the next 2 screws. One of them is really easy. This other one right here is kind of a pain in the butt, but you can get it. And screw number 10 is going to be right behind this panel, and this is where we're actually going to be mounting the brake controller. There she is. At this point, you're pretty much just gonna wiggle that bottom kick panel out. Make sure to disconnect your headlight switch, that way you don't go tearing that harness and ripping any of those wires out. We're gonna put the control knob right here, and I have an SE. I'm not sure, maybe on the SEL if there's a button here for something, but it's a perfect blank spot. To make sure I get the button nice and centered, I drilled my pilot hole from the inside out, so that way when I hit it with the hole saw, it's centered in that little area. The directions call for a 1-inch hole saw. I use a 7/8 and then I'm using my little die grinder to grind down any extra material I need to get it to wedge in there nice and tight. I'd rather drill a little small and slowly bevel it out than go too big and have that thing loose as a goose. Now we need to assemble the switch. It only goes into the dash insert one way. It's held together by a little plastic nut. They say not to over tighten it. Directions say 7 foot-pounds, basically as tight as you can get it with your fingers. Rotate the knob all the way counterclockwise and then stick on your indicator knob with the 0 in the 12 o'clock position. Now we're going to feed the wires to the Redarc pigtail down through a little slot. That way it can meet up with our vehicle's harness. Connect the data cable for the knob on the other end. Now we're going to secure it with a self-tapping sheet metal screw. Only use a screw long enough to get past that ear and into the sheet metal. You don't want something so long it's going to go to the other side and just tear up any kind of wires or snag on something in the future. Now I dressed back the data cable for the knob, secured it with a zip tie, snapped in the control knob to the data cable, fed the headlight switch harness back out, and reattached everything in the dash. Next I terminated all of the wires. The directions on the Redarc say to disconnect the battery so that way you don't cause any shorts, but if you've ever fiddled around with a Volkswagen, you know disconnecting the battery is not a good idea. That thing will wake up a totally different beast. So don't disconnect the battery. Just go ahead and pull those 2 fuses I showed you. I like to put heat shrink on it, a little added barrier against moisture, and I think it's just gonna protect these connections in case they get tugged on at any point. I don't know when they would, but maybe I'm abundantly cautious. For butt connectors, I did use some of those step butt connectors that have 2 different gauges, a thinner gauge on one side and thicker on the other, because the Redarc has definitely thicker gauge wires than the ones that are in the car's harness. Snap that lower kick panel back on and pop a Fred. We're done. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I hope I was able to answer some things that you've been scouring around the internet for. I know there's not very much information on these vehicles, and Volkswagens aren't the most friendly vehicles to work on. Trust me, I tried doing the Bluetooth one because although I'm very mechanically inclined, I'd just rather be hanging out with my baby or slamming microbrews. So I was really apprehensive to get in on this project and get it done, but I hope that you can use this as a reference to install yours very clean, very easily, and without a headache. Thank you so much. If this is your first time coming by the channel, please hit that subscribe and ding that notification bell. Here at JTV Life, we got nothing but hacks, how-tos, and reviews on all the dude type stuff. If you're doing dude stuff, hit subscribe. You're gonna wanna come by and check it out. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of JTV. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.